round 16 action in the NPL New South Wales men's competition between St George FC and Sydney Olympic. Peter Price alongside me.
Mulchi, absolute pleasure to be here this evening. Bit of a tandem call, something different for NPL New South Wales this weekend, of course, here at Barton Park.
Beautiful. Go for it.
A very good evening indeed, and a warm welcome, of course, here to Barton Park in the southern suburbs of Sydney as we tick over into the second half of season 2025 of the New South Wales NPL men's competition. A fixture so crucial for both of these sides in terms of their finals hopes as they meet for the third time, in fact, this season. It is, of course, St George FC playing host to Sydney Olympic. Pete Pryor alongside you for the call this evening, and alongside me is the man himself, Alex Molchanoff. Alex.
Nice to be with you tonight, Pete, and we're taking in a game that has so many implications for both these teams. So much history at these ground for both these teams as well. It was the fixture chosen to open back up Barton Park a year ago. So great to see both teams back in all their glory, and it's going to be a big result for whoever gets it tonight, Pete, because they're going to be left in the wake of the teams chasing the top six if they're not able to pick up 3 points tonight. Both have their games in hand during the week as well. That'll be a factor as we get towards the end of the 90 minutes, but very excited to be here alongside you calling this one.
Set up for an absolute blockbuster here, of course, in round 16. The team news is in, so let's take you through how each side lines up ahead of kickoff here at Barton Park. Of course, starting for the hosts, St George FC, ever-present number 99, Mackenzie Siren. 3 in captain Troy Danaskos. 4, Mark Rodic. 5, Nick Caligeru. 6, Pat O'Shea. 8, Evan Souris. 10, Jaden Casella. 13, Sunday Yona comes back into the starting 11 this week. 14, Justin Poon. 15, Boy Antonio. And 27, Jaden Cito. So just one change for the hosts this week, with Aidan O'Shea dropping out after picking up a knock in last week's 0-0 draw with Manly United. For the Travellers this afternoon, or this evening I should say, my apologies, of course, Sydney Olympic starting in goal. Number 1, Jack Gibson. The 5, Ziggy Gordon. The 6, Thomas Witten. 9, Cyrus Demi. 10, Jack Armson. 11, Adam Parkhouse. 14, Seth Clark. 16, Bailey Callahan. 17, Josh Hong. 18, Ten Kuol. And 19, Gianni Tapizio. No changes for Sydney Olympic this week. Coming into this one off the back of a 2-0 loss at the hands of Apia Leichhardt last week, but St George are in a bit of a horror run of form, in fact, themselves, not having won since that 2-0 victory over the Mariners at this venue, Alex.
We were improved last week against Manly, though, Pete. That was one thing for Fabian Michelli to take away from that game, rather. Jaden Casella back in was a big positive. Wasn't able to get on the score sheet on the night, but he, Justin Poon and By Antonio gave Manly plenty of problems at Cromer last Friday night. I think they'll be able to hit a bit of form here tonight against the Sydney Olympic defence that's been ropey at times this season.
The whistle blows and away we go. Of course, St George FC getting us underway and immediately sweeping it out to the far touchline. Repelled initially by Sydney Olympic. Up towards Demi, who couldn't quite bring it under his spell. All the way back to Jack Gibson, of course, in goal. Big raps on Jack Gibson, the former Wanderers gloveman, of course. Still just 22 years of age. He goes long in search of Demi, who is hustling and bustling, trying to force a way through the heart of that defence. The Saints able to deal with it and link up with Casella immediately, and then Souris, and then swept out to the left for Danaskos, who strides forwards, taking the space and linking up with Justin Poon now. Evan Souris again. Just trying to get their patterns together early in this one. St George, Sydney Olympic able to deal with it, but unable to advance over halfway. Demi was the furthest forward and really without any sort of support.
He's looking isolated up there, isn't he, Pete? It's very early stages, must be said, but they had a bit of a problem with that against Apia last week. Weren't able to get enough support around him. We know how strong he is in hold-up play, doing a better job of it here.
As it goes wide now, Adam Parkhouse twisting and turning and able to clip one in towards the back post as well. Headed clear as far as the edge of the area, where Armson lashing one goalward, but blocked off as soon as it left his boot. Wonderful pickup, of course, Jack Armson for Sydney Olympic this season. But it's St George looking to go up the other end. Halted by the referee's whistle as the free kick is given in favour of Sydney Olympic.
It's been interesting the way that Labana Haliti has been trying to get Jack Armstead involved more in games. He's moved him deeper in midfield next to Gianni Di Pizio. They played some good stuff through the middle there a week ago against Apia Leica, but he hasn't quite had the goal return that we saw last season at Apia Leica because of that. Early strike, though. Maybe he's just shifting his focus a bit further forward.
It could be a mistake here, though, allowing Casella to roll through and roll home. Well, he doesn't not score against Sydney Olympic, does he, Jaden Casella? He opens the scoring inside 3 minutes here at Barton Park, just as he did in round one inside 4 minutes as well. Jaden Casella scores against his former side once again.
That's 3 in 3 games for him now, Pete, and it's a disaster for Olympic. We saw them give away 2 soft goals in not dissimilar circumstances against Apia. The giveaway bug has struck again. This time it's Gianni Di Pizio just dwelling on the football, and Jaden Casella, after having those few weeks out with injury, looked bright and bubbly, as we mentioned, against Manly United a week ago. He gets his name on the score sheet here, as he loves to do, against his former club, Pete.
St George's masked hero strikes again. And doesn't he just love it as well, Jaden Casella? It's been a fantastic move for him, of course, shifting here to Barton Park mid-season last year from Sydney Olympic, as we said. Still a lot of football yet to be played in this one, of course. As Gordon coming across to steal in just ahead of Casella there. What a start for the hosts here. Dream start. As we said, they did open the scoring last time these two sides met in round one. Through that man again, Jaden Casella, inside 4 minutes, but Sydney Olympic on the day got the job done by 2-1. Here is Casella. Sliding in is Gordon, able to free his feet as well and link up with Seth Clark. Move breaking down as quick as it began, though, and now Justin Poon with a bit of space. Flag is up on the far touchline, though.
This start was just what the doctor ordered for St George, Pete. You talked about that poor run of form. They're 6 games without a win in league football coming into this one. But they've been welcoming players back, slowly getting back to the form that we saw earlier in the season that had us thinking they might be contenders for the top 6. They still could be that.
Here is Demi, though, looking to flip the script on this one so early here. Now, Parkhouse crosses straight into the legs of the St George defender. Straight up in the air for Demi, but nodded back to Siren, who's stretched desperately to try and prevent the corner, but hasn't been successful in doing so. So first corner of the afternoon or the evening here at Barton Park in favour of Sydney Olympic, and a chance to send some of the big timber forward. We see Ten Kuol coming forward, as is Josh Hong as well. It's not usually described as big timber Josh Hong, but he's handy in the air, that's for sure. Variation on the corner as this one swings away from goal towards Kuol, and then, well, not the most likely of candidates there, you'd think, perhaps in Ziggy Gordon, but he did get the strike away, and it flashes harmlessly wide in the end.
You usually see him attacking that first ball, Pete. He's generally the first one forward at the front post when Armstead angles those balls in, but it's a good piece of technique to steer the ball goalwards, only a metre or so away from Mackenzie Serron.
Vastly experienced defender, of course. Ziggy Gordon had years in the A-League with the Central Coast Mariners and the Western Sydney Wanderers as well. Prior to that, a number of years in Scotland with Partick Thistle and a couple of stints at Hamilton Accies as well. A couple of years in Poland as well, for good measure. Here he is, Gordon. Nodding it forward, but again, no Sydney Olympic player within a QE of it, really. It's handy from Di Pizio there, tracking back and linking up with his former Mariner teammate in Ten Kuol. Interesting one for Gibson to bring under control, and, well, he brought it under control, but didn't really have the control on the ball out.
Just not quite at the races in the opening 6.5 minutes here, Pete. Giving up a lot of the football to St George, which is not what Sydney Olympic generally want to do. And they're finding it uncomfortable with all the pace and power they're throwing at them the other way. This is what they want to see. Seth Clark getting involved, probably a little bit higher up the pitch than that, but being dominated through the middle of the pitch at the moment, which I don't think is something we were expecting when we saw the two lineups named tonight.
Seth Clark, of course, was very much involved further forward last time these two sides met, just over a month ago in Australia Cup action as well. As we said, this is the third meeting between these two sides this year. St George themselves yet to taste victory against Sydney Olympic. Seth Clark on the score sheet, at the double in fact, in that 5-2 victory for Sydney Olympic in the Cup.
That's been the spark
behind here today.
It's been the spark for a bit of good form for him, Pete. Moved centrally from Labano Haliti has worked wonders in an attacking sense. It's the first time they hadn't found the back of the net since making that move with him playing in behind Cyrus Demi. So, be hoping it starts to strike up again here, but again, they've got to find the way to get the ball to him higher up the pitch.
Danaskos back with Souris. They'll just work their combinations and their patterns here once more. The Saints, Danaskos again. Good movement from him to find a pocket of space. And, well, Ziggy Gordon stealing in at a crucial moment as the ball looked destined for the path of Casella. Sydney Olympic again guilty of giving it away and trying to play out from the back. Danaskos couldn't quite find Casella. And it's Gordon again on hand to clean up. And sent straight into touch once again.
And it's aimless, isn't it, Pete? You know, don't want to overstate it. It's still early in the game in the opening 8.5 minutes, but Sydney Olympic, a team with so much talent, we've talked about their problems with consistency over the course of the season. You see it in patches from inside 90 minutes, you know. You just want them to be striking the right note earlier because we know the talent is in the side. Players that have done it at this level for a long period of time, but balls like that are not helpful.
It's Gordon who was looking for that raking crossfield switch of play, but again, it's St George who are able to break into a handy-looking pocket of space with Sunday Yona. His advance is halted by the sliding challenge of Thomas Whitten. Thrown straight back into play quickly, St George with all the urgency, all the impetus going forwards. Again, Yona scrapping for it. Didn't quite fall kindly for him, though. It did fall kindly for Seth Clark, who, well, nearly played his way into the avenue of uncertainty. He looked in two minds there as to whether he wanted to turn and try and spin out of trouble himself or link up with their teammates. In the end, the ball just finding touch on the far touchline. And it's all St George at the moment. Another strike blocked off. Sydney Olympic have a lot of growing to do in this one if they are to find anything. For a club of their size as well, Alex, where they are in the league at the moment, of course, we did mention earlier in the piece, they should be scrapping for finals. They shouldn't just be scrapping for finals, they should be constantly in the mix. They missed out last season, and it's St George again here with Poon. The strike from Danaskos just waves the left boot at it. Jack Gibson happy to watch that sail harmlessly over.
He's such a key part of the way they attack the captain, Troy Danaskos. Since his move across from St George City, he's been a goal-scoring threat as well as one that can provide things for the guys in front of him. And Justin Poon ducking in off the left flank is giving him that space to try and overlap. They're so dominant in possession at the moment, St George. It's really giving their fullbacks a good opportunity to get forward. Just on Olympic, that point you were making, Pete, you know, they got that Australian Championship at the end of the year to have a look at, and that's been part of the reason I'm sure Labano Elite's been flicking the magnets around so often this season. He's also had a lot of injuries to deal with. The fact of the matter is now they're bordering on 3 straight campaigns without looking like playing finals football since that premiership win back in 2022. And that's not acceptable for a club of this size. The supporters know it, the coaching staff know it, and given the strength in depth that they have, it's the envy of so many other clubs around the competition. Yes, they've had injuries as well, but they've got a little bit more cover than a club like St George, who've had the challenge of only having 12 or 13 first-team players available for them for the majority of the year. And the fact of the matter is, even with the points deduction, they sit level with them on points. That's not where they want to be. They want to be up around your Sydney Uniteds, around your Blacktown Cities, talking about finding their way into a championship playoff series. And be hoping that they can strike a better band of form in the second half of the season as we approach that all-important Australian Championship beginning in October.
Here's Demi again, blocked off, but able to link up with Clark bursting into the area now. It was Caligeru coming across, covering, blocking off the pass just before anyone was able to pull the trigger and do any sort of damage, pose any real sort of threat on Mackenzie Siren's goal. Josh Hong nodding it straight back to Jack Gibson.
Part of the question that Labano Elites has had to answer is what to do at the heart of his defence. And Tenquolo's been used in almost every position across the middle of the pitch this season. He's played as a holding midfielder, an attacking midfielder, a striker, back in centre half, which is where he arrived at the club thinking he would play. His versatility has been a great weapon for them, but it's not quite looking the safest at the back at the moment with Ziggy Gordon. Donny Gurditch back in reserve today. We'll see if that change gets made over the course of the 90 minutes.
DePizio looking to hook one over his shoulder. Again, breaking down before it even really gets going and dinked over the top for Casella. Oh, that's delightful to take him away from Quoll. It's Casella. Recovering challenge from Quoll and then the strike from Poon. Is always fading away from goal as he just sliced through it. But again, it's the cheap turnover from Sydney Olympic, nearly causing absolute chaos, absolute carnage. We've seen that versatility from Tenquol all through his career. I do remember when he arrived at the Central Coast Mariners as well, and the coaching staff there really didn't know what to make of him, where to play him. He played, as you say, as a 6, an 8, a 10. A 9, a 2, a 3, 9.5. As here comes the 14 in Poon. Support is Danascus. Poon again, trying to get around the outside of Hong. Low, flat delivery towards the penalty spot. Juggling on the edge of the area, and now Danascus to hook it in. Quoll to repel it as far as Captain Parkhouse. But again, just about everyone behind the ball for Sydney Olympic and no avenues forwards as Parkhouse just turns it into touch on the far touchline.
It's looking desperate at the moment, isn't it, Pete? They are pegged so far back into their oon half that Adam Parkhouse is getting back, making clearances with no one really ahead of him. Got to find a way to control the midfield, and giving the ball away less through that area of the pitch is going to be key.
That's a wonderful looking ball to find Sunday Yona in a handy pocket of space. Now Yona pulls it back into the area as well. It's desperate last-ditch stuff once again. And hacked clear, really, by Sydney Olympic. And St George, the Saints are coming.
Gorgeous switch on that occasion from Danascus. Inch perfect. And young Tom Whiffen, who's coming at left back with the knock to Zach Zoricic, has had a torrid couple of weeks, Pete. It was against Jack Stewart, and now it's Sunday Yona this week, giving him headaches.
Doesn't get any easier. Well, it does get a little bit easier for him on that occasion. The ball out towards Sunday Yona again, running harmlessly into touch.
I've talked about the injury struggles that St George have had over the course of the year. One thing they're not short on is attacking wide players who can really get at defenders, and the way they've utilised Casella and Antonio as the base has been really impressive. But Poon, Sunday Yona has been fantastic. Aidan O'Shea back on the bench after that knock last week was very good in the early stages against Manly. They've got Chanyel Chan back, who was expecting to be basically their starting centre forward on the bench. Hasn't played since round 2 against Rockdale today. So there are increasing options for Fabian Michello. They've got to be careful they don't get caught in situations like this.
Well,
a little bit of a break.
Parkhouse thought he might have found a couple of yards of space there as he jinked over the top of the sliding challenge, but running out of real estate on the far touchline and running out of play. St George have it back. It's Casella. Now they'll work it across for Souris. Just keeping the ball moving here. Moves it on to Danascus. Cito. Caligeru. My apologies, that's Rodic, of course. And again, Sydney Olympic win it back in the centre of the park and give it away instantaneously. Lavi Halisi be tearing his hair out on the sideline, I think, at this point in the game. Just about 17 minutes gone here at Barton Park, of course. St George leading Sydney Olympic by that solitary goal by who else? Jaden Casella, of course, in the 3rd minute. And looking very good value for their lead as well. Quoll sends it forward towards Demi, and again, immediately Rodic gets body position and takes it straight away from Demi. No support. We spoke about how strong he is and how good he is at holding the ball up, but it's all good and well being able to hold the ball up, but it doesn't serve any purpose if there's no one running off you.
And he's also someone, Pete, that can be involved in intricate build-up play. This is looking better as they get a chance to play forward through Callaghan.
Callaghan going around the outside of Danascus now. Danascus recovering, sliding in at the expense of a corner. Sydney Olympic on a, it must be said, rare foray forwards. Second corner of the evening for the away side. And a chance to create some mayhem inside the penalty area. Chances have been few and far between. They need to make these sorts of situations count. Adam Parkhouse, of course, I guess you could really describe him as a club stalwart now to swing this one in. And it's Siren rising and getting a very good fist to it. Sends it straight back behind though. Parkhouse doesn't even really have to move to retrieve the ball. He'll get another go at it here. Deeper, even still this time. Siren, well, spilt it initially, but able to gather it at the second bite. And the chance goes, and going up the other end immediately are the Saints here with Casella. Into the half space it goes. Pulled agonisingly wide of that far post. The ball stayed in play though with Yona. We'll have it back as well and float that high and deep, and brushing off the brunette locks there of Josh Hong. And then in turn brushing off the head of Troy Danascus as Hong sent it back up the other end of the pitch.
He's grown that hair out since his time at the Mariners. There you, Joshy.
Is that a few different styles over the years, Josh Hong? He's left that one just behind him. He might just be favourite to get there, Josh Hong. He is indeed, reaching it ahead of Danascus, and, well, done ever so well to keep it in play. But straight at Jaden Cito, who is then hauled to the deck here by Cyrus Demi. That's the deepest we've seen him so far today, the Sydney Olympic number 9, and it's a bit of a frustrated strikers challenge, that one there.
Well, he likes to throw his weight around, Pete, and to the credit of Jaden Cito, he's not one of the biggest centre halves in the competition. He's been right up for the fight. Drayden Kelly did the job for Apia Leichhardt last weekend, almost man-marking Demi for the entirety of the match, but he's got the size, which Cito doesn't. He's doing a very good job.
Yona, with a few step-overs, able to work his way into the area. It's taken off his toe, though. Thomas Whitten acquitting himself to the task well. No easy feat to halt Sunday Yona. Speed and trickery, of course. Former Hills United man. Another one who made the move to Barton Park this season. We spoke about the depth and the utility of some of their wide players. Jaden Casella, I know, started his life as a wider sort of player, playing very centrally at the focal point of that attack this evening. Danascus now injecting the width on the near touchline. Antonio looking to... My apologies, that's of course... Is that Antonio?
He's got a tear in that jersey, doesn't he,
yes,
Pete?
He made the 15 look like a 16. It's thrown me there. He's looking to link up with Poon, but just a bit too much pepper on the pass. Well, if you are just joining us on the Football New South Wales YouTube channels, an absolute pleasure to have your company here from Barton Park, of course, for round 16. St George FC leading Sydney Olympic by that solitary goal, courtesy of Jaden Casella. It is Pete Pryor and Alex Molchanoff with you on behalf of Football New South Wales. Danascus, a good looking little clip over the top for Justin Poon. Wriggles his way into the area. Arriving late was Casella again at the back post, and it just brushes off the studs of Jaden Casella. I fancy it's taken a touch off a Sydney Olympic player on the way through as well, because St George will retain it by way of throw. Here is Casella again. Yona. Little triangles forming on the top corner of the box as it swung in centrally. Repelled as far as Evan Souris. Danascus. Just calm it down. And it didn't break for Caligeru in the end. It fell very kindly for Seth Clark. Sydney Olympics turn to try and string some passes together here with Callaghan. He's got plenty of room forward in which to move into, but just delayed and awaited some support, and St George able to get numbers back behind the ball. So those two defensive low blocks there, so compact, occupying all the passing lanes. Josh Hong, pass is picked out initially by Danascus, but it breaks kindly here for Clark, and that's a scything sort of challenge there from Mark Rodich. And you can perhaps hear the difference of opinion of the two sets of supporters in the crowd here at Barton Park.
No surprise on that, Pete. It's frustrating as a centre half because he goes into that, Mark Rodich, that's what he makes his living on, is winning challenges like that in the modern game. More often than not, referees are going to blow up for that sort of thing. It's a shame because he has timed his challenge well. He's won the football, but not allowed to leave as much as he did on opposition players any longer. And the result is going to be a very good shooting opportunity for Sydney Olympic from a set piece, and they've got plenty of dead ball specialists. It's going to be free kick by committee, I think, here, Pete.
Meeting of the minds over the ball. It's in a very good position as well to be able to get the whip and dip, the up and down, over the wall and back down under the crossbar. Mackenzie Siren will need to make sure he's got his wall set and built just so. Looks like 5 in it. Parkhouse and Demi and Tenkwal all standing over the opportunity. May favour the left foot of Parkhouse, perhaps.
It's a gigantic wall they've put together. Pete, Pato in the centre of it. 6 players for Mackenzie Siron.
Well, we did say that he'll want to ensure it is built just so. 3 standing over this for Olympic. It will be Demi, straight for goal, but didn't quite get the bend on it. Didn't quite wrap his boot around that one just enough there.
He had his head in his hands as well. He felt that was very, very close. It'd be interesting to have a look at the angle as we get the return to us here, but Mackenzie Siron was not moved.
Siren very confident that he had his angles correct, and meanwhile up the other end we go with Sunday Yona bursting into the area here. Holds it up and finds some support. Now clipped in towards the back stick. Well, straight into the arms of the awaiting Jack Gibson there. Comfortable take for the Gloveman. That's his bread and butter, really.
Tell you what, though, in full flight, Pete, aren't St George fun to watch? Watching Sunday Yona and Justin Poon get down the wings so aggressively, really pegging the fullbacks into their own box. Been held scoreless in 2 consecutive games for the first time this season over the last couple of weeks. This is looking more back to the form they were showing at the start of the year when we were so impressed by them in an attacking sense.
Over the top it goes once more towards Casella, and once more it's Ziggy Gordon cleaning up. Now Demi, that's good feet to skip away from Rodich, who is walking that yellow card tightrope now, of course. Parkhouse, a couple of touches to set himself and then swing it in high and deep, and repelled initially. It didn't quite fall for Armson. St George seemingly, at this point in time, able to deal with just about everything that's been thrown at them.
They get a lot of help. Pat O'Shea's obviously a player who's played in the heart of defence before, but Evan Souris covers so much ground. Pete did very well to get up and get back and sweep up as Armson looked to get the shot away there.
It's Quoll linking up with Ziggy Gordon and now Hong, who's stayed forward on this near touch line. Bailey Callaghan back to goal and trying to evade the attention of Danascos, who's just about done that, but now he's got another couple of red shirts for company as well. Does well to dig the pass out before DePizio links up with Hong again, and we will see another yellow card, this time brandished in the direction of Josh Hong. Just a professional foul there, trying to halt the rapid transition that we've seen oh so often this evening so far from St George City. Or St George FC, my apologies. I don't want to get that one wrong too many times.
They'll get you pretty hastily taken out, Pete. Got to be very careful there. That was disappointing for Olympic because that was their best period, probably the last 5 minutes or so, where we've seen them having the ball, playing with it in attacking areas. Seth Clark getting on the ball in more dangerous areas. Jack Armson similar. Just a loose pass from DePizio giving the ball away, and then Hong's forced into a professional foul, as you mentioned. St George, such a threat in transition as well. Been able to attack both with the ball, building up play from the back and getting the ball quickly and springing forward with the pace they've got in the flanks and the wide areas, as well as the support by Antonio, who gives Jaden Casella. So plenty to watch out for Olympic, even though they are seeing more possession.
And here is that man, of course, Antonio. And it's Yona again, who's enjoying the fruits of that ball out there from Antonio. We're able to go back and reload to Danascos via Souris. Poon, Danascos as well. If there's one thing I love in football, it's an overlapping attacking fullback. Troy Danascos, just about the epitome of that.
I was going to say, he might be your favourite player in the competition at the moment there, Pete. He's one of the best players in that sort of role in his team in the competition at the moment. I think of players like Dakota Askew out at St George City, not too far from here now. Giorgio Speranza's done it for so long at Rockdale Ellendon. George Daniels making a name for himself at Marconi doing that sort of thing. But Danascos, I think for me, is probably the leader in terms of being able to contribute in an attacking sense, both with goals and assists. He's got such a wonderful left foot. And you see him inverting here as they play forward through Cito. He's really joining in high up the pitch.
It's Poon. It went to that space where Danascos was occupying just a second or so ago. He had retreated though, so behind it will go for just a Sydney Olympic goal kick.
Things have settled down that end of the pitch though in the last 15 or 20 minutes. Olympic have managed to get themselves back in this game. The credit must go to the players because they weren't looking their sharpest in the opening quarter of an hour, and they're starting to ask more questions of St George FC's defence. Got to be wary again in transition here though.
Tenkwell stepped out of the line of the heart of defence and found himself a little bit out of position. Sunday Yona able to break free and pull the trigger. The angle proving too tough for him to overcome on that occasion.
And talk about a player who has the ability to go to the next level. Sunday Yona is a player that's been used mainly off the bench by Fabian Michelli this season. His running power, his dribbling, unquestioned. It's just that end product, getting his head up and really being able to deliver with quality at the end of these attacks he builds. Gianni DiPizio is having a real struggle in the middle of the field at the moment though, Pete. Touch is just not going his way. He's given the ball away on too many occasions. He's a player with plenty of talent, but at the moment he's not had his finest half hour.
It's certainly a player that we've come to expect a little bit more from, I think it's fair to say, than what he's been able to display so far in this one. It's still plenty of time for both he and his teammates to really grow into this one. Just the one goal in it as things stand here at Barton Park. Ball is with St George. It's Souris. Danascos keeps it moving effectively to Pat O'Shea. Antonio again looking to unlock the wide channel now for Sunday Yona. Diving in was Whiffen. Final touch indeed off Thomas Whiffen at left back for Sydney Olympic, so St George will go to the corner.
Must give credit to the young man. He's not seen too much playing time this year. Hasn't got the physical attributes of his direct opponent today, but he's reading the game fairly well. His anticipation's making up for the difference in pace between the two players at the moment, Pete.
In-swinging delivery to come for St George. It's absolute chaos in that 6-yard box as well. It is not clear initially. The strike will come at the end of it from Antonio. Never really got hold of it the way he would have liked, though, by Antonio. Just nearly came off his shin, really, in the end. Straight into the turf and behind, harmlessly. As Sydney Olympic this time look to play their way out from the goal kick. Souris gives away the foul right in front of our vantage point here on Seth Clark, of course. Sydney Olympic keen to get on with it very quickly. Dinked over the top by Josh Hong. Trying to weave into the area here is Callaghan. Again, it's taken off his toe by Damascus. And speaking of weaving, Evan Souris with a handy-looking turn, but he's put his teammates under a great deal of pressure there with the ball out. Sydney Olympic now with a chance to try and force the issue with Demi. Looking for the reverse pass for Parkhouse, though, and it's picked out at a crucial moment. I think that was Rodic cutting out the ball there from Cyrus Demi, who will be desperate for a goal today, of course. Cyrus Demi, it is his 23rd birthday tomorrow. What a birthday present that would be for Sydney Olympics number 9. They're on the march forward here once again, Olympic, with Callaghan, who wants to isolate Damascus. Still Callaghan now has support in the form of Clark. Shifting onto his left here, Clark, and dropping in to great effect and taking off the toe of Seth Clark before he could really create any sort of danger. Now it's Poon. St George again, rapid in transition. Sydney Olympic defending that one better initially anyway, because the second ball looms large now with Yona, and Whiffen does very well indeed to take it off the toe of Sunday Yona.
I was about to give Olympic some credit because they managed to turn the tide of this game. We're seeing them play, as I said, with the ball in their attacking half a little more. But now St George's threat in transition is coming. And Sunday Yona's had a couple of opportunities to get at Tom Whiffen. Without their young left back, Olympic might be in a little bit more trouble than they've seen so far tonight. Another set piece for them to defend here.
Another in-swinger. Bodies a bit more scattered throughout the penalty area than they were at the last delivery. As this one is swung towards the edge of the 6-yard box, and rising are a couple of blue shirts, and they're able to hook it clear as far as halfway. But again, everyone was behind the ball defending the corner. Handing possession straight back to St George, now with Evan Souris. Damascus, who will just take the opportunity to calm things down now. It's Kalajeru. Rodic. Kalajeru again, clipping it wide. I think that was Casella lurking out in the wide area there, drifting about. As we said, he did start his life as more of a wide player. Had a spell in the A-League with the Mariners as well, where he was primarily used as a winger. Moved to Rockdale as well not long after. Sydney Olympic for a brief fleeting moment before making the move to pastures new. His home now here at Barton Park, and he just loves scoring goals against Sydney Olympic. Ooh. Well, that's perhaps a fairly cynical sort of challenge.
I'll disagree with you there, Pete. I think he was just caught by the shimmy, and the swivel of the hips from Casella was too much for Whiffen. And he's managed to get his body in the way, but rather dramatic upending of the number 10. Casella can operate in those areas. You said beautifully. He's been used more centrally by Fabian Michelli this season with Antonio in behind him. It really gives him license to roam because he knows he's got that second striking presence coming in behind him. It's been used to really good effect tonight, getting St George back in control of this game after they've given up a bit of momentum in the last 10 or 15 minutes.
About 10 or so minutes to go until the interval here at Barton Park in round 16. St George with the opportunity to perhaps double their advantage. Going straight for goal, rattling the crossbar. I tell you what, Jack Gibson was absolutely scrambling for that one. It has fizz and whip and dip. The strike from Casella, but just not quite enough dip from his point of view. Sydney Olympic survive yet another scare.
We just had so much swerve on it, that ball, didn't it, Pete, that the goalkeeper was almost caught out by it completely. Would have been disappointed to concede from there, but he's crossbar saving him. And St George really, given the pattern of play over the course of this first half, I think can be a little disappointed that they haven't managed to double their money here. Still a bit of time for them to get that done before half-time, though.
Goalkeeper's nightmare as Jaden Casella was looking to add to that ever-growing highlight reel, of course. Out wide it goes for Antonio. His cross is blocked immediately. St George looking to finish this half with a flourish. We saw a real flurry of chances in the opening exchanges here. As you said, Alex, of course, things did sort of calm down and cool off a little bit, and Sydney Olympic managed to wrestle some momentum, but St George are turning the tide, as you say. Pops out towards O'Shea. Left by Jaden Cito, I should say. My apologies, that's Justin Poon, was it? Realising he was offsides, not risking the ire of the assistant's flag on the far touchline.
Tell you, just watching the great vantage point here at Barton Park. You're just above pitch level, so you get a good view, but you're also getting an idea, which you are across the stream as well, of the physicality between the hold-up players and their centre-backs. Really are engaging. Even Casella, who is diminutive by striking standards, is happy to engage and look to try and roll Ziggy Gordon with by Antonio coming off the back of him. Cyrus Demi, we talked about his battle with Jaden Cito earlier in the first half. It's been an underlying bit of fractiousness in this game, Pete. And be surprised if we don't see a flashpoint or two over the remaining hour or so of this game.
Sent long by Mackenzie Siren. Poon scrapping for it against Hong. Kuol coming across to cover. He steps out of the line of defence so often, does Ten Kuol. Does risk sort of throwing the shape all over the place at times. That time it was effective enough. Here's Soros. It's Demi back doing some defending here. St George again win it straight back. It's Caligeru, as you might have heard the shout from those Sydney Olympic faithful, stop giving the ball away.
I think that's a complaint that's been fairly consistent for them over the course of the season, Pete. When they have played well Olympic, they really have played some solid stuff, but it's just too many nights like tonight where they can't get their combinations going. Whether that's because of the sharpness of the players, because they're being outworked a little bit by their opposition at times. That's the impression I've had watching the first half here, is that St George has just been a little bit hungrier for the football. Rather than anything tactical or particularly fancy the two coaches are doing, playing the usual systems. That's the sort of effort they want to see more of.
They've got to be in the fight, of course, in the scrap and try and force the issue. But as you say, it has been such a stop-start season, really, from Sydney Olympics' perspective. And when, as you say, when they look good, they look great. But currently, at the start of today's play, sitting in 11th position.
That's not helped by the points deduction, right? We talked about that a little bit earlier in the broadcast, but fact of the matter is, even with that, they'd be sitting well outside the top six.
They could be in more trouble here as the cross is swung in again, and it was Poon who was arriving late, and Josh Hong gets there first, but turns it behind for yet another St George corner. That corner count now starting to mount up and really favour the hosts. We did speak about how good Sydney Olympic look when they do get going, but St George, as you said earlier in the piece, Alex, have been so fun to watch as this one is swung in and repelled initially by Ziggy Gordon, only as far as Sunday Yona, who never really got hold of that one.
Well, it was on its way out for a throw, Pete. And Jaden Casella, well, he might have started a counter-attack here for Sydney Olympic.
As it goes over the top for Demi, Sirens had to come a long way. And I'll tell you what, he's got that absolutely spot on. He had to. The goalkeeper, of course, Mackenzie Serron. As if he got that even a fraction of a second wrong, he risked either bringing Demi down or Demi skipping through and free and clear for a certain goal, as Qual's got some chasing to do against Sunday Yona here. Qual, Pat's favourite to reach it. Had a couple of yards advantage. Had the stride advantage too, I dare say, over Sunday Yona. Casella from range. It was speculative from Jaden Casella, but if you don't buy a ticket, you don't win the lottery, of course. He is the difference so far in this one. Another Jaden Casella goal against his former employer. As Gibson sends it long again in the direction of Demi. Rodic gets his head to it. It ricochets off Armson. Hong will look to pick it up and juggle his way through centrally. DePizio. Qual. Gordon turns and assesses the options. Finds Callaghan. First time ball then from DePizio. Callaghan will get the return ball as well. DePizio shifts it on to Clark. This is much better from Olympic. It's Whiffen. Again, it's perhaps speculative from the left back. Flashing harmlessly over the crossbar, and Mackenzie Serron now forced to retrieve and play ball boy.
Where has that been, Pete, for the first 44 minutes of this game? That was gorgeous football. Intricate players moving off the ball. Josh Hong getting involved in a high fullback position. Gianni DePizio summing up his options really well, finding the square ball for Seth Clark. And then the shooting opportunity comes for the opposite fullback. That's what Olympic want to see more consistently. They've got the quality. They've got the ability to do it more consistently. They've just showed us. We're certainly not out of this game. The fact they're only a 0-0 down means it's well within their reach.
You summed that passage up more eloquently than I or most others perhaps ever could. As they seem to have their tails up now, Olympic. Clark. Demi's taken a tumble off the ball here and is clutching his arm. Still down, Cyrus Demi, and the referee will call a halt to proceedings to check on the welfare. In fact, I think he's blown the free kick.
I think you're spot on, Pete. And that was picked up by the assistant, Amir Hossein Hosnani, on the near side. And he was spot on. There was a coming together off the ball between Rodic and Demi. He goes right into the centre forward, 5 or 10 yards off the ball. That's a correct decision from the officiating crew, and a late chance here for Sydney Olympic. Silly piece of play from Rodic, who should know better.
And he is walking that tightrope as well. Booked earlier in the half, Rodic. And I think there are a few questions being asked as to whether that should have drawn further sanction. As we tick into added time here at Barton Park, Sydney Olympic finishing the stronger of the two. Just the 1 minute to be added on, and we're through about 40 or so seconds of it already. This perhaps the last roll of the dice of the first stanza for Sydney Olympic. Clipped in by Armson. Headed straight up in the air. It's a bit chaotic in the box. And relief coming in the form of the referee's whistle. Free kick in favour of St George.
And a correct decision to get, again, he's had a good night, Hayden Langholtz. There's been a couple of little comings together and some players upset with what's happening. You can see him hearing a word there with Jaden Casella in midfield. I don't think either team can have a complain about the way this game has been refereed to this point.
Absolutely. Hayden Langholtz ensuring the free kick is taken in the correct position as well. Perhaps a bit of gamesmanship from the St George custodian here, Mackenzie Serron. no interest in playing out from the back. Perhaps to be expected.
Not at this late stage, Pete.
As this one is sent long, we're ticking into the second minute of time added on here at Barton Park, and Sunday Yona has gone straight up the other end and he's won his side a corner as well. Well, the plot perhaps thickens. Is there another twist in the tail? Is there even enough time to take this corner?
I think there will be, and I'd be throwing everyone forward here if I was St George. Sunday Yona did a brilliant job there. Made plenty of a lost cause. That ball was just hit into the channel, and he's managed to work an attacking set piece for his team.
Well, they have thrown just about everyone forward, have St George, as this one is swung in towards the edge of the 6-yard box, headed clear initially. And Demi completes the clearance, and referee Hayden Langhall says that'll do for the first 45 here at Barton Park. A thoroughly entertaining contest between these two sides, St George FC and Sydney Olympic. As we did expect at the top of the broadcast, so much to play for between these two sides. Alex, how do you sum up the first 45?
Well, it was one in which St George started the brighter, mainly thanks to what Olympic were doing, but credit to their team because they worked their way back into the contest, had a couple of half chances. Cyrus Demi was getting into the game more. Jack Armson and Seth Clark seeing the ball in more attacking areas, but then St George were able to hit and counter-attack, and Sunday Yona really came into the game. Olympic are going to have to turn the tide in the second half because I think on the balance of things, St George are probably more likely to go 2 up than the other way around at the moment, but they've got the quality to change things for Sydney Olympic. We'll see what Labana Haliti does at the break.
Finally poised ahead of the second half here at Barton Park. We're after a short break, but don't go anywhere. Join us for the second half in about 15 minutes' time.
Welcome back to the second half here at Barton Park. St George FC leading Sydney Olympic by a goal to nil, thanks to Jaden Casella, his third in 3 league games against his old club, St George, who got the chocolates here on the opening night of the existence of Barton Park a couple of years ago in doing the double against Sydney Olympic, looking for their first victory against them since that season in 3 occasions since. I'm Alex Molcharoff here for you in the second half. Peter Pryor is alongside me. Pete, what are you making of what we've seen here so far, and what do you think Sydney Olympic will change, if anything, at half-time?
Entertaining, high-octane opening 45 between these two. We did expect some fireworks and, perhaps a bit of a potential for a blockbuster. Of course, these two sides really scrapping for finals, maybe that final place in the top 6, desperate to not let the chance run away from them as we tick into the second half of the season. As we said, Jaden Casella, the difference, as he so often is, between these two sides. 45 minutes of action to see if Sydney Olympic can flip the script on this one.
As things sit, St George would move up into 10th position at the end of the night if they can hang on to this goal to nil lead. Glad to have you with us. Wherever you're joining us, a very warm welcome to the Football New South Wales YouTube channel on this Saturday night from Barton Park, a historic site in Australian football. A venue that St George have been a bit up and down at in 2025. Great to see the rain stay away on Saturday after the downpour on Friday. If it had been one of those Friday night pictures, Pete, I fear that we may have been moved back 24 hours at the very least, but the club have foreseen that, and their players are living up to the standard. This is similar to what we saw at the start of the first half.
Yeah, absolutely. Torrential conditions throughout the course of last week. We have seen one fixture deferred as a result of that already, with the Mariners round 16 clash against Manly United being washed out tomorrow.
Demi able to run with the football. Sito playing sweeper behind Mark Rodic, the only St George player booked in the first half. Callahan growing in influence as the first 45 went on. So the same of Seth Clark. Kiwi, who has been instrumental for Labano Aliti's side since moving into a more central role. You can hear away to our right, Pete Pryor. There are some frustrated Sydney Olympic fans with what they're seeing in the opening stages of this second half.
Feels like they want a bit more verticality, a bit more drive forward,
well
perhaps,
put.
As Jack Armson looks to provide that.
Callahan trying to chase something down. He and Danascos have had a fine little battle down that wing in the opening half. Olympic turning the ball over with far too much frequency over the opening 45 minutes, but looking back to not their best, but better towards the end of that 45 minutes, and trying to get intricate here through Armson, steering it up for Demi, and an awkward one for Souris that he didn't catch. DePizio, who has not had the funnest time of retaining the football, turns it over. Tenqual bails him out, and then he turns it over. Even his ball playing ability at the back, it's just all a bit clunky at the moment for Sydney Olympic.
Clunky, I think, is probably the most appropriate word to describe it, as this one falls ever so kindly for Caligeru,
who's measuring it in behind, but Gordon read the danger and stepped across to clear. His distribution is an undervalued part of his game. Mackenzie Siron, probably one of the more underrated goalkeepers in the competition, was responsible for St George getting a point last weekend against Manly United. That 0-0 draw, saving from the penalty spot with 15 minutes to go. St George just dumping it into Olympics' ends. Front four of Boone, Antonio, Casella and Yona have provided plenty of headaches for Olympics' back four, but haven't been able to find the back of the net since the opening 4 minutes. Casella came closest with a curving effort that struck the crossbar of Jack Gibson with 10 minutes to play in the first half. Now they build from the back with Rodic, Caligeru. Yona has had the better in this little battle with Whiffen, who is holding him back all the way. And almost an ironic cheer as Hayden Langholz goes to his pocket to book the Olympic left back.
Both fullbacks in the book now for Sydney Olympic. Thomas Whiffen, the latest guilty party after Josh Hong picked himself up a yellow ticket for, well, a similar sort of challenge in the first stanza as well. Just dragging his opponent down, and Jaden Casella with a chance to whip something into a really dangerous sort of area here.
Returned to the starting lineup against Manly United a week ago. Not quite back to full fitness. You can see he's still in the mask after a facial injury he suffered against Spirit FC a few weeks ago. St George so happy to have him back fit and firing. He's always up for this fixture. Trying to turn provider here. Good string of bodies. And deepest is Antonio with no one near him. It's an acrobatic effort to keep the ball in play. And it might pay dividends. Pizio able to get back and interrupt that. A poorly placed ball from Callaghan, though. Not the first time we've said that about an Olympic player passing the ball upfield tonight. Armson leading the press. Citroen happy to clear his lines. Right to the feet of Antonio as well. Danascus easily dealt with by Gordon. Now Hong forced to clear his lines, and it's a little skew if. Disappointing, Pete, because Olympic had looked as though they were finding some rhythm before half-time. It seems to have departed them again in the second half, and you have to wonder how soon Labano Haliti will be looking to his bench.
Well, that ball forward just a moment ago from Callaghan in the direction of Demi was really so typical of what we've seen for the large parts of this contest from Sydney Olympic. Cyrus Demi cutting such an isolated figure up top, had no one anywhere near him, and it's a tale of two transitions really. St George so quick, so rapid in transition, getting the ball forward with reckless abandon nearly at times, turning defence into attack in the blink of an eye. And Sydney Olympic, there's no real sort of link there.
Energy of the St George play has been fairly impressive given the injury concerns. We've talked a little bit about that over the course of the broadcast, but they have looked as though there's a little bit more sharpness in their legs off the ball as well, with a glut of fixtures coming. A couple to make up for them, both this week. I think that's going to be all the more important. 3 points up for grabs that will be so crucial to both in the race for the top six. Sitting at 11th and 12th coming into tonight. St George set to jump Olympic if things stay as are, or if they're able to find another. Poons off the shoulder. Engages Hong. Darting, it's his favoured foot, he's right. They're playing off the left-hand side tonight. That's a long way out for Evan Souris, and even with his purity of strike, not able to give Jack Gibson too many headaches there. Trickles behind for a goal kick.
And again, it's St George with yet another example of how quickly they move the ball, how they're able to just find these pockets of space that they shouldn't be able to find, really.
Need Seth Clark to be doing it down the other end, Olympic. Prompting and probing. Armson, the edge of the centre circle. Will he be shifted further forward as this game goes on? Parkhouse running into Calagero. So he's had a pretty quiet night, Nick Calagero, because Parkhouse has not been a factor in this game as much as Olympic would like, certainly, Pete.
We've seen him force back a number of times to help out his left fullback there in Thomas Whiffen as well. Sunday Yona forcing his winger back, and, well, that's just goes to show what a great evening Sunday Yona's having as well.
I have to say, these fouls are starting to tot up the other way. St George, when they do concede the ball, sensing Olympic might be going forward on the breaker, happy to step in. This time it was Poon bringing down the Olympic player. Demi almost through, but Sito nicked it off his toe at the perfect moment. And Antonio has acres of free space to stride into through midfield. Poon. Well dealt with by Gordon, who's almost playing a lone hand at the back at the moment. Armson. It's waiting for the whistle. It never came. And eventually it's the Scot who's able to bail out his teammate again. Only as far as Danascus initially. Almost able to nick it back off Callaghan as well. DePizio with Demi in a wide area. Haven't seen that too often tonight. Sito across to meet him again. He's had the better in that battle, hasn't he, Pete?
So far, absolutely. Yeah, and we spoke about the strength and physicality of Cyrus Demi. Jaden Sito's matched him every step of the way so far, and we will see Labi Haliti go to his bench now.
That yellow card's a bit too much of a risk to have Tom Whiffen. It'll be a like-for-like change. Zach Zoricic, who has played the majority of the season in that position. Another of a plethora of former Mariners Academy players out there tonight.
Absolutely. Josh Hong, Tenkwall, Gianni DiPizio, Zach Zoricic now as well. Adam Parkhouse, a Central Coast native himself from Davistown.
I knew you'd be able to teach me something I didn't know, Pete. There you go. Been down in this competition for more than a decade, Adam Parkhouse. Lovely turn from the substitute, Michael Varkis. Danaskos defending desperately. The back heel was clever. Now it's Evan Souris' turn to try and dribble his way out of danger. We'll say that. The second of the substitutions is Bailey Callahan. I mentioned that Michael Varkis has joined us. Signing from Mercoa back in 2022. It's well done from Zoricic. Immediate impact, linking up with Parkhouse. Ducking in on his right foot. Oh, and he'd beaten Siron. But it thunders against the crossbar. Closest Olympic have come. And aren't their fans buoyed by it?
Well, they're up and about now, the Olympic fans. You hear the chants. Olympic going up throughout Barton Park here. Zach Zoricic straight into the action immediately, and that's what he's going to provide as well. That go forward, he's got such a great engine. I do have to wonder if Mackenzie Siron maybe just got the faintest of touches on that one.
He doesn't want the credit because it ended up being a throw to his side. But if he did, it's one of the better saves of the season. Such was the ferocity of the strike. The fresh legs of Zach Zoricic. Now it's Josh Hong's turn to try and chase something down the far sides. Danaska's smart enough to win his team the free kick.
He's still on that yellow card tightrope as well, of course, is Josh Hong. Labi Haliti keeping the fullback out there for now. He is a threat getting forwards when he does get the chance to attack, and he is a good technician as well, is Josh Hong. But Olympic has that pendulum of momentum perhaps swung back in their favour.
Labano Haliti is certainly hoping so. Their fans are buoyed. Now they've just got to be as tidy as they've been in their best moments tonight, then be as lethal as possible when they are presented the opportunities. Qual bringing the ball out from his own back line. Zoricic thumps it into Sunday Yona. Appeals from the supporters for a handball, rather ambitious. Zoricic. Rodic read it well. Souris getting a foot in. Poon not really aware of his surroundings. DiPizio, can he measure something? He's given Varkis something to run for. And a little nutmeg on Danaskos. It wasn't clean, but it was effective. He's turned him inside out, and Sito is forced to put the ball behind. You mentioned it, Pete. Feels like the momentum is turning.
Yeah, the introduction of Zach Zoricic and Michael Varkis just a moment ago. Zoricic into the action immediately, rattling the woodwork. That's as close as the Olympic have come in this one. And they've all of a sudden grown into this one very nicely.
Something from the training ground as Clark thumps it in at the near post. Siron stood up. We'll do it all again. Another attacking option on the bench for Labano Haliti in the form of Dylan Ruiz-Diaz, if he needs him tonight as well. Good ball in from Parkhouse. Danaskos on the right-hand side. Varkis, it fell for him. Well, a nice height too, Pete. No one around him. Wonder if he was aware of that fact.
Yeah, just didn't strike it cleanly. St George survive another scare.
And this has been where they need to improve. They've given up late goals on more than one occasion this season, lost more points from winning positions than any other team in the league this season. Passes like that won't help them. Calogero turning it over for DiPizio. Now Clark. Demi, he was helped over, got back to his feet. Armson trying to weave through a forest of red bodies. Thumped clear by Cito. Agricultural stuff from St George, but it's effective for the moment. Gonna have to find a way out of their own half at some stage. This is building so nicely. A game with so much meaning for both sides. Olympica trying to seize the day. Seize the moment against the team they've had a very good record against this season. 2 wins against them already, 1 in the league, 1 in the cup. Playing as well as they have all night, but turned over by Demi. Antonio Caligiero sees off the attention of Parkhouse, finds O'Shea and now Yona. Well read by Zoricic. She's making more than a fist of it on both sides of the ball. What an improved player he's looked this season, Pete. Did wonder about the signing when he first came to Olympic, and wonder if the pressure of the shirt got to him a little bit, but he has been fabulous for them. A standout in an up and down season.
He's perhaps been the one to change the game so far in this one. We did ponder earlier in the half as well whether we might see Jack Armson move further forward to support Demi. He certainly has been. At the moment, it's Olympic making all the headway into this one.
St George with that goal-to-nil advantage given to them by this man, Jaden Casella, inside the first 5 minutes. Casella struck the crossbar again half an hour later. That's the closest St George have come to doubling their advantage. Olympic have struck the woodwork down the other end since as well. And Farkas, his running power is becoming a more and more prominent asset. And Tony just forced to head the ball clear and give St George some sort of breathing room in their own defence, who are coming under more pressure than they felt all night. Qual wasteful.
I was just about to say as well, this is so much better from Sydney Olympic. It's all seemingly one-way traffic, and epitomised by Jaden Casella a couple of moments ago, just cutting that full-on isolated figure by himself. That's the first time we've seen that tonight. We're so used to it being Cyrus Demi in the opening encounters or opening exchanges, but Sydney Olympic on the march forward once more.
It's the Ivorian-born striker who is seeing more and more of the football and his teammates around him. Brilliant piece of defending from Ziggy Gordon. Still such a terrific athlete at 30 years of age. DePizio. Demi just onside. Lobbed over the top. Something for DePizio to run for. He was always second favourite. And Ciron's able to see it over his own byline. Georgia's defence holding off relatively well. It's not to say Olympic haven't had a sniff. They certainly have, but they've been limited in their opportunities. And Olympic have shown at times this season a problem with breaking down defences that are well set and disciplined and deep. Managed to come from behind in the opening round of the season to get a 2-1 win out at Belmore. There's an Olympic player down. It looks as though it's Seth Clark.
Yeah,
and now Hayden Langholtz pulling up play. This time Jaden Cito goes down. It's all happening here. It's going to take 4 eyes to keep across all this, Pete Pryor.
Just getting a quick look on the monitor here, Alex. It doesn't look good at all for Seth Clark. Went up for the header and just landed awfully awkwardly. Testing out the knee or the ankle. The ankle here, I think.
And now Mackenzie Ciron and Jack Armson are squaring up in the middle of the field. Not sure what the St George goalkeeper's doing there, but the referee was checking on the well-being of Clark, and those words being shared have become very, very antagonistic indeed between those two players.
He's come a long way from goal, almost halfway there.
Singled him out, hadn't he?
Straight to Armson. And his handbag's nothing else, but you have to wonder what was said and what really sparked that for Mackenzie Ciron to come nearly 50 yards there.
We mentioned there's been an underlying physicality to this game in the first half, didn't we, Pete? Particularly between the centre halves and their strikers, but you feel as though there are some challenges starting to fly in now. Players committed to winning the football. I don't think there's been anything particularly malicious. It's just perhaps a product of how much this game means to both sides.
Yeah, tend to agree. Both sides realise absolutely what's at stake here. 3 points would be a great help, of course, as we said. As we keep saying, in that hunt for finals, a loss isn't the end of the road by any stretch of the imagination, but it does make the task all that much more difficult, potentially seeing out the rounds. As many as, I think it was 8 points adrift, we said, perhaps even 9. Without a win tonight, Sydney Olympic making a very good go of it in this second stanza. The thumbs up for Seth Clark, so it looks like he will be all right to continue in good news for Sydney Olympic.
Finally, he's allowed to rejoin. His team out of possession. As things stands, Olympic would be 8 points adrift at the end of the night. Sydney United getting that 2-1 win against Sutherland earlier today. Other results from around the grounds will bring you in just a moment. Sito lobbing that one up rather than out. Clark's first touch since rejoining. Evaded Armson. Danaskas able to clear. Without their focal point, Casella had drifted wide. Calogero and Parkhouse had hold of each other, so play's allowed to continue. Demi, as deep as we've seen him in the second half. Looking up with Clark and Parkhouse. Clark's continued his run. Rodic, not one shy of making a tackle, and his physicality probably won out there against the New Zealander. Fell for Armson. Might have fallen nicely for Vakis if Danaskas hadn't read it so beautifully. And his control's good as he brings it forward. St George at their best in transition. Antonio squeezed it between the legs, not without enough power though to find Poon. Hong sweeps in to save the day. Armson, this game is really becoming more and more stretched. Still 25 minutes to play as well. Yona bundling over Clark. A very late challenge. Not picked up. Olympic fans becoming more and more vocal. They know the importance of this result to their side. That's a clumsy challenge from Cyrus Demi. No more subs coming. This time it's for St George FC. A lot of juniors on the bench again tonight. Kota Tuyuka and Jaden Dorevsky. But the first turn is not going to be to either of those. Looks as though Aidan O'Shea is going to be the first brought from Fabian Michelli. So the change that was made in reverse a week ago at Manly United after O'Shea was taken off. He really was prominent early in that game as well. Good to see he shrugged off that injury. He joins us here. Game right in the balance. He's side leading by 1-0 thanks to Jaden Casella's 4th minute strike. Both teams have struck the crossbar since then. Neither have been able to find the second goal of the game. St George setting about trying to change that. A first chance for O'Shea. Lovely touch. Couple central. He went himself. Deflection off Hong, and Gibson can't keep it from going behind for a St George FC corner. The sub brings results going the other way now, Pete.
Yeah, perhaps unsurprising to see Sunday Yona withdrawn. At that time, I feel, since the introduction of Zach Zoricic, particularly, his effectiveness has maybe waned somewhat. Take nothing away from him, though. He's got through an absolute mountain of work and then some this evening. Gave Tom Whiffen no end of headaches throughout the opening half. And a rare chance here, and I didn't think I'd be saying that earlier in the piece, for St George.
Speaks to how the momentum of this game has changed. Gordon, as he always seems to, reads the set piece best and is able to clear for Olympic. Centre-half partner Quall thumps it into the retreating Calogero. Found himself all the way on the left wing, the right fullback. And it's a Sydney Olympic goal kick. Now it's time for them to make a couple more changes. So we'll have one more stoppage. Yanni DiPizio is the man being removed. Get you an ID on who's replaced him. Looks as though it's Dylan Ruiz Diaz. It's gone under a few different numbers this season, but it is the former Sydney FC, Western Sydney Wanderer and Central Coast Mariners Academy player. He got through a fair few of those in his junior years. Used fleetingly by Labano Haleti in starting roles this season, but it's been a regular off the bench. He's got some running backwards to do here because Souris has O'Shea in support. Can St George kill it off? O'Shea goes to ground rather softly. And not even he was appealing for the penalty there.
Some ironic jeers, I think, from those Sydney Olympic contingents off to our right here, Alex, and it's still being played in good spirits in spite of the stakes here.
Two clubs who used to share this ground, of course, Pete, a long time ago. Its former iteration. St George FC, Olympic using it as their NSL grounds at the end of the 80s until 1994. They actually played their last game, home game here in an NSL Grand Final. Second leg against South Melbourne. Lost 4-2 on aggregate. Run of runners-up performances they had through the 80s.
And a great setup here, of course, at Barton Park since the redevelopment. Reopening a couple of years ago, as you said earlier in the piece, with a fixture fittingly between these two sides.
Frank Arrock stands housing us this evening to have a bit of Australian football history built in. Clearance from Sito, although inadvertent, did strike Dylan Ruiz-Diaz on the arm. Away from his body, fairly easy decision for the referee. 20 minutes to go here, Pete. It's going to be a braver observer than I to pick who's going to win it. St George obviously the favourites with this goal to nil advantage, but Olympic have had the better of the last 10 or 15 minutes, I think it's fair to say.
Absolutely. As we said, the initial substitutes from Labi Haleti giving a fresh spark and injection of energy. Zach Zoricic always full of running and endeavour on the left. And now, of course, Michael Varkas as well. The trickster on the right with Dylan Ruiz-Diaz. Labi Haleti is throwing just about everything in the kitchen sink at this, as you would expect him to, of course, being a goal behind, chasing the game. But it's so open, so stretched, as you said.
All three goals have been scored by this stage in the reverse fixture at Belmore back in round one. Seller's opener came, funnily enough, after 4 minutes that day as well. Equaliser following after just 6 from Sydney Olympic before Parkhouse got a quite spectacular winner with just over 20 minutes to play. Hoping he can repeat the trick here. He's only got the one goal this season back in round one, Adam Parkhouse, for Sydney Olympic. Low return by his standards. Demi's wrestling through midfield as won his side a free kick. It's an absolute handful for defences, and Olympic stopped from taking the free kick because there's a St George player down on the far touchline. Not because of the position of the ball, as Jack Armstead seems to be indicating. You can understand the frustration from Olympic's point of view, but know that this will all be added on. So the substitution comes, and this is a terrific moment for Shan Yil Chan, who was signed to be the main man up front for St George this season. Hasn't played since round 2 against Rockdale Ellendon. Was a starter for them in both the opening games of the season, opening 2 games of the season. And he's on here for an 18-minute stint. Backheel was ambitious, it must be said. It's another one of these pacey, powerful players that St George boasts that can run at defenders. Really give them issues, as Bay Antonio is doing here. Looking to get a shot away. Qual did well to recover and block. Still, only as far as Calageru. Bay Antonio swinging it in over the head of O'Shea. Olympic see out another raid from their opposition.
What a weapon to be able to bring off the bench, of course. As you just said, Chan, Yel Chan, so powerful, so pacey. Tenqual and Ziggy Gordon going to have their work cut out for them as well. I'm sure there's some tired legs between the two of them. No rest for the wicked, as they say.
Not at all. It's going to be all hands on deck to hold on to the result here for St George. Olympic have improved as the night has gone on. Casella, as deep as we've seen him this evening. Antonio not rolling it to anyone in particular's advantage. Pat O'Shea showing his years of experience just to keep it in St George FC's grasp. Clearance from Seron. He was asking for a bit more from by Antonio. And he's staring down the face, or staring in the face rather, of a second straight clean sheet. St George FC goalkeeper. It's something that was as rare as, well, you can go anyway with that metaphor. One's not coming to mind at the moment for me, Pete. They were rare as anything earlier in the season, but it speaks to the sturdiness of their backline that they've managed to see out quite a few Olympic raids during this second half. 16 minutes to go. A reminder as well, you can find all the highlights and match reports, reviews, previews of every round from the men's and women's competitions on the NPL New South Wales social pages. Go to @NPL NSW on Instagram and X. NPL New South Wales on Facebook. I'll have you covered any which way you like to use your social media to keep up with this competition. Stepping into the second half of the season. Just the one game tomorrow on the Football New South Wales YouTube channel. Blacktown City taking on the Marconi Stallions at 3 o'clock. Game already postponed at Plume Park. Central Coast Mariners have had some problems getting on there this year, haven't they, Pete?
Absolutely, with the, as we just wait to see how this plays out, Rodic hooking that one into touch. We did have around 700 mil of rain throughout the course of the week on the Central Coast.
Doesn't help, does it?
To be expected that it would be at least moved. It has been postponed to a time and date yet to be confirmed, but also they saw the previous fixture against the Wanderers washed out the prior Friday. Dangerous
ball for St George to deal with, but Demi was the only one wearing blue and white in there. What can Ruiz Diaz conjure? Has got that sort of quality about him. Former Australian underage international. It's one of the most highly touted coming out of his age group. Been a player with plenty of technical talent, not showing it off there. Although managing to recover. Hong pokes it forward. Rodic winning over Demi. Nice touch from Souris. Let's put a couple of tidy ones together tonight. Casella is looking for the space out wide, and it's left short by Ten Kuo. Casella! Oh, it's as easy as that! It gets better and better for Jane Casella and St George FC. Olympics undoing all their own making again. And for all their quality in this second half, they've copped another goal on the counter and look set to drop all 3 points here. St George FC's 6-game run without a win looks set to end at Barton Park, Pete.
It had to be him. It was always going to be Jaden Casella. Of course, goal number 7 of the season for him against his former employer as well. Once again, striking at the heart. It was Ten Kuo who just left it short of his goalkeeper. The pass back intended for Gibson proved profitable and fortuitous for Casella, who makes absolutely no mistake from there.
The masked man stealing in to rob Olympic of the football deep in their own half. And once Gibson was beating, he only needed to tuck the ball into an empty net. St George hoping to hold on to another lead. They're doing better than that now. Full of confidence, buoyed by the goal. Antonio. Well, Casella almost left it to him, thinking I've got 2 already. Off you go, Bate. Not able to catch it as he quite would have liked. And another night for Olympic, much like it was against Apia a week ago, where they'll say they've showed enough, but need to be producing the performances for longer periods of the 90 minutes. Still, they could snatch something here. 12 minutes to play, plus whatever's added on by Hayden Langholz and his refereeing team. Clark. Can he be the key to unpick the lock? Zoricic throwing himself in. Ruiz Diaz nods it forwards. Sito strong enough to ride Demi's challenge and clear the danger. Varkis and Hong, neither of them strong enough initially. Ball trickling out of play. The third defender, the touchline, nicking the ball off Chan Yel Chan. And now the inquiries and recriminations are beginning amongst the Olympic faithful who've made the journey out to their old stomping ground tonight.
Ruiz Diaz again, just trying to pick the lock there. They need to try and get him into the game as he is here.
He wants the ball at his feet. He's got it there now. Won it for himself. Parkhouse. Clark darting out to the left. Calogero blocks the cross. They pick up an attacking throw from which to base themselves, but I have to say these set-piece situations have not looked like the place the goal is coming from for them, if it is at all, this evening. Demi surrounded by red shirts again. Rodic, oh, now he's already on a booking, Mark Rodic, and that's the end of his night. See, he was committed to the challenge, and he was late in getting to 10 qual. So St George are going to have to see out the final 10 minutes or so with 10.
And not a smart challenge again there from Mark Rodic. It's a similar sort of challenge that bought him his first yellow card. Hayden Langholz with a pretty easy decision to make, in all fairness, there. And Mark Rodic's night is over. And well, this one perhaps not quite a foregone conclusion just yet.
Well, he's already seen off a suspension for the 5 yellow cards this year, Mark Rodic. He's going to add another week to his book. We'll be out of that game on Tuesday night against Sydney FC here.
And again, no malice in the challenge whatsoever. It's just late and mistimed and a bit high. 20 years ago, let's play on.
I have to say that was the more obvious yellow card compared to his first, although both, I think, in the spectre of things were pretty fair. And now Cyrus Demi's going to find himself in the book, pulling down his opposite number. A little bit of gamemanship.
Well, things have been simmering somewhat under the surface at times in this one, and it's really starting to reach boiling point, I think.
All looked a bit for show there, didn't it? St George players just making sure Cyrus Demi was about to see yellow after watching their centre-half be sent off a moment earlier.
St George looking perhaps to go to their bench once more. No, Troy Danascus has just been called over for some final minute instructions.
Well, St George, a team that have had such trouble seeing out games. Yelshan just bustling his way through and on his less favoured left, striking fairly easily for Gibson to wrangle. 10 qual's been moved up front, playing at centre back and centre forward tonight for Lebanon Elite. That's not unusual. Now there's a decision to be made here. Ciron was confident the ball would be adjudged his way for a goal kick. He was proven correct.
10 qual playing in the Harry Maguire role, really, as we saw Manchester United in their Europa League defeat at the hands of Tottenham Hotspur. And it must be mentioned, a massive congratulations to, of course, Ange Postecoglou and former Mariners Academy coaching staff Nick Montgomery and Sergio Raimondo.
Forget the academy. First team.
I was getting there.
Well, a substitution, one of their former charges, Jaden Casella, finding his way off. What a night. 2 goals against his old club. Olympic, after being his team for just under 12 months, have become his favourite opponent. It's going to be his 2 goals either side of the break. Well, they're going to hand St George FC all 3 points. Strikes number 6 and 7 of the league season. Takes him level with Antonio as St George FC's top scorer. They have been the troublesome 2 for opposition defences this season. Antonio looks as though he's going to see out the 90 minutes. Lending a hand defensively on the right wing that Casella has vacated. Remiss of us not to mention that the replacement is Caden Wright, coming into the centre of midfield. Kalajeru has just gone about his business very quietly and very professionally this evening. Has barely put a foot wrong, marking one of the best wingers in the competition in Adam Parkhouse, who has barely had a sniff.
That's a sign of such a great performance from your defender. You don't want to notice them. Kalajeru has, as you say, put in such a workmanlike shift, so professional, and full marks to him.
I think we're getting a sneak peek of how Fabian Michelli will deploy his charges next week with Rodic out, Panache sliding in alongside Jaden Sito as he has done regularly this season as his centre-half partner. Wright's playing with Souris through the centre of midfield. Lovely bit of skill here from Vakis, who has been bright since coming on. Ruiz Diaz, another substitute, and Qual was there. The touch from Kalajeru enough to take it away. Parkhouse trying to keep the attack alive. Swarm of red shirts across to see off the danger. Antonio getting as much joy from his defensive duties as his attacking ones at the moment. Before we talk about Olympics shooting themselves in the foot in terms of giving up the opportunities for St George FC, much like they did a week ago, it's almost been a carbon copy of that performance against Apia Leichhardt. It's the fact that they've not been able to find the back of the net down the other end that will worry Labano Haliti as much as anything. That equation which looked to have been solved, it's once again sticking its hand up as the real issue. I was going to say out at Belmore Oval, but it's Jubilee for the rest of the season. Donny Gurdic has joined us. See him back fit after a stint on the sidelines with injury. Fallen out of favour since coming back with Labano Haliti, but you do wonder whether he'll be reinstated to the heart of defence as he was earlier in the year when he and Ziggy Gordon were doing a pretty good job of protecting Jack Gibson. Hasn't been the case over the last few weeks.
No, absolutely. And you're spot on in your assessment, of course. For all money, Sydney Olympic look to have wrestled all the momentum back in this one, and it's just a silly error at the back once again. Just I don't know if it's a lapse in concentration that costs them once again.
Yelshan, only with Gordon back, almost playing as a sweeper. Brilliant piece of defensive work. The flag was up for a free kick. The whistle eventually comes. High boot spotted by the assistant on the near side. Can Olympic salvage at least a consolation to take into their game against the Central Coast Mariners on Wednesday night? Zoricic will go up against his former club on Wednesday. Clark. Olympic need to find their way between the lines. Thompson does that by finding Ruiz Diaz. Converged upon by three St George defenders, and they managed to nick the ball off him fairly. Yelshan, such a terrific outlet for them in this stage of the game as well. Although he's trying to play the man rather than the ball, and it hasn't paid off. Parkhouse. Oh, it's fallen for Demi. Awkward height for the Sydney Olympic striker. And by the time he'd managed to control, Sito was right in his grill.
Such an awkward bounce, as you say, there for Cyrus Demi. On another night, that sits so perfectly for him. And we would have been set up for a blockbuster finish into the final 3 or so minutes of regulation time here at Barton Park. There's been a couple of stoppages here and there throughout. You'd fancy perhaps 3 or 4 minutes of time to be added on. We're not far away from finding out.
If you think of a sliding doors moment for Olympic, it was Zoricic's first foray forward. Linked up with Parkhouse and struck the crossbar. Had that found its way into the back of the net. 1-1. Olympic would have been favourites to go on and win it. St George have taken their moments, shown their opportunism, and they're about to be rewarded with 3 points. Zoricic. Clark. Demi spinning away from Kalajeru. Again, he meets Wright. This is better from Olympic. That's exactly what we saw at the end of the first half as well. Clark jinking and trying to weave his way through. There are too many St George bodies back. Kalajeru gets it to nick off Parkhouse and skim out of play. So I'll ask you the question now, Pete. With this loss here, with the 3-point deduction, is there any chance Olympic are playing finals at the end of the year?
It's hard to say, if I'm being honest, and I don't like to say it. A club of Sydney Olympics stature should be in the top 6 at the very, very least. Anything less, you'd have to say, is nothing short of a failure, really. I don't want to come across as too harsh, as Yelchan is brought down by Ziggy Gordon, nothing doing.
Armson trying to give them something to take home. Vargas. Danaskos has been one of the best for St George again tonight, and he's back to slide in and steal the ball off the foot of the Olympic winger. Corner for the visitors, though.
Just about everyone forward here for Olympic.
Nothing to lose now. Floated up towards players in blue. Ruiz Diaz caught it sweetly, and now he's in a foot race with Caden Wright back towards his own goal. One of the youngsters that has come in and done such a serviceable job for Fabian Michelli when called upon this season. Used as a wide player occasionally, but more often through the centre of the park. Vargas. Still he goes, Michael Vargas. Oh, and Demi, has he brought it with him? Cyril managed to recover. Did very well, the St George FC gloveman. A second straight clean sheet coming his way. They were few and far between for St George early in the season.
Well, for all their endeavour, all their bluster in this second half, Sydney Olympic still have nothing to show for it. They've found clear-cut chances, nigh on impossible to come by. They've had a few half chances, a few half sniffs here and there. But it's just, after such an error-prone first half, as you say, Alex, they've shot themselves in the foot not once but twice.
2 giveaways in their own half. Can they steal something? Vargas and Pat O'Shea takes the congratulations for sliding at Vargas' feet to put the ball behind. We're in the dark as to how much time will be added on here. Zoricic. St George down to 10 after losing Mark Rodic for a second yellow card with 10 minutes to play. They've held their line gamely. Clark. Parkhouse. Now Ruiz Diaz trying to flick his way through 2 players, driven back towards his own goal. And then the delivery is towards no one in blue. Starting to be a couple of boos ring in from the travelling Olympic supporters that have stayed.
Well, he's just got that one all wrong, Dylan Ruiz Diaz, and uncharacteristic of him. He is such a fantastic technician. Was one of the most highly rated during his journey through the Mariners Academy. Spent a few years abroad in Poland and Uruguay and Brazil as well. Returning to the NPL this year, and still very high hopes for him. He's still only 24 years old, but got that one, just overcooked it.
Well, we've talked about St George snapping their 6-game winless run. Olympic are only going to have one of those in their last 5 at the end of the night. The 4-0 win against Sydney United at Jubilee Stadium. Rare high amongst what has been a pretty dour month for them. Vargas stepping too early. Big chance with the run of fixtures they've got after this. The Central Coast Mariners at Valentine Sports Park, and then travelling to the Western Sydney Wanderers. They lost to them at Belmore earlier in the season, though.
And it's so typical of the stop-start nature, the inconsistency that Sydney Olympic have displayed all throughout the course of this season. And they have the opportunity on Wednesday night, of course, as they host the Mariners at Valentine. Massive opportunity for them to get 3 points. But this is a chaos league. Anything could happen, really, right?
Well, St George have been the epitome of that, conversely, Pete. Picked up some scalps against big teams that no one expected them to. And have dropped points from winning positions, as we mentioned earlier tonight. This has been a more professional display from Fabian Michelli's team, and I think he'll take great heart in that.
Even since they have been down to 10, even when Sydney Olympic did wrestle that momentum back, and they were backs to the wall, they held their lines, they held their shape, just continued to block off most of the passing lanes and continued to make Sydney Olympic work very hard to try and fashion anything. Indeed, they haven't been successful in doing so.
An unusual one there. Zach Zoricic told to take the ball further up. Throw in, don't see that too often.
Usually the polar opposite.
Exactly right. Just looking to get the ball back in play. Feel it's too little too late now for Olympic. Demi. I mean, this passage of play has told you everything you need to know about the night. Olympic trying to break down a well-set defence, and they have failed at that task for the periods where they have been on top in general play. Gurdic. Now Ruiz Diaz. Demi streaming towards goal. Oh, now it was a clumsy one from Sito, but coming together rather than a kick on the back of the heels. Referee right between he and his assistant, Lucy Hungerford, on the far side. And Hayden Langholz has his whistle to his lips. St George FC hang on. The late red card to Mark Rodic never really put them in too much danger. The 2 goals came from who else? Jaden Casella after just 4 minutes, and then with 20 remaining. Olympic had their moments through the middle period, striking the crossbar through Zach Zoricic with half an hour to play. That could have given the game a different complexion, but not to be. Just 1 win in their last 5 as they leave Barton Park. Pete Pryor, it's been a pleasure to have you alongside me. Final thoughts on tonight's encounter?
As you say, professional workmanlike performance from the hosts this evening in St George. They finally snap that winless run, of course, their first win since round 9, and few would begrudge them of it. Wonderful performance, and of course their masked hero Zorro, as the calls were coming out from the crowd. Jaden Casella was fittingly on the score sheet once again to take all 3 points.
4 in his last 3 against Olympic, 7 for the season in the league, and Jaden Casella's name writ large in this fixture again. It's been a pleasure to have you with us tonight. For Pete Pryor, I'm Alex Molchanoff, signing off from Barton Park on the Football New South Wales YouTube channel, where it's finished in round 16. St George FC 2, Sydney Olympic 0.